Shadow Hack. Chapter 201, Capturing a Live Ape God. When Demon fought together with his sea beast, even Blade Overlord Lin Jian, who was ranked 9th position among the halted Fluxers, wouldn't have 100% certainty to win. Demon wasn't an armored soldier but a warrior. The weapons he used were two 5th-dimensional devil beheading blades. His position was similar to Barbarian News, at the front of the squad. The second line was formed of Li Yunmu and Flowing Cloud, while the third had Li Qinghong and Lin Jian. As for Devil Monkey, who was a hunter, he wandered all around the squad. The 3-dimensional space eyes were all been sent out under the system's precise control. One of them was probing the area in front of the group, while other two monitored its flanks. It had to be said that even without Li Yunmu, this would be an extremely formidable battle squad covering all the positions to make it so. But even when such a formidable battle squad moved through the valley in the King's true territory, they still felt an enormous pressure. Devil Monkey was quite experienced with secret regions. He'd said previously that King's true territory was extremely large, and once the 8 of them started walking forward, they learned of the truth in his words. When they left the valley, they discovered on the black plain in front of them a group of 5th-dimensional monsters roaming about. Their number roughly crossed 130. As for their strength, the beast with the lowest strength was a rainbow crystal dimensional beast. Devil Monkey's fearful warning came from the front. Ape gods, and a large group of them. We're a little out of luck. They are extremely terrifying, so be extremely careful and cautious. Halt! Don't move forward. Ape gods were considered as massacring fiends even in the true 5th dimension, and now there were more than 130 of them in front of the group. The strength of these beasts was far more formidable compared to that of ordinary rainbow crystal dimensional beasts. If Devil Monkey wasn't certain that they were truly in the King's true territory, he would have certainly mistaken this place for the 6th dimension. What the F***? Why did the 1st-dimensional beasts they encountered had to be the extremely formidable ape gods, and this group they met even contained more than 130 of them? Didn't they exceed the level of this King's true territory? For a short while, the battle squad, which could be ranked as the most powerful battle squad within the 5th dimension in terms of strength, held back their breaths from fear. All of them lost their previous lofty ambitions. The situation had changed greatly, to the extent of making them lose all hope of advancing. Fortunately, Devil Monkey was an extremely outstanding hunter and had discovered the danger early and promptly warned them. If the battle squad had entered this region in a rush, then even if they wouldn't have been exterminated due to their formidable strength, the majority of them would still have fallen here. We should take a detour, we cannot provoke them, Li Qinghong decisively suggested the most optimal plan. If it had been a group of ordinary rainbow crystal dimensional beasts before them, then they would have had the courage to battle them, using the terrain to their advantage, but this was impossible now. It would never work again, the ape gods. It was embarrassing to admit it, but if they were discovered, they would have little chance to escape the resulting chase by those extremely powerful beasts. However, at this moment the shadow behind Li Yunmu's body suddenly shook once and divided into 4. The 4 shadows then charged forward to kill the ape gods. No need to take a detour. Leave this group of monsters to my shadow clan, Li Yunmu said with a trembling voice, which was shaking not because of fear but excitement. Previously he'd had no knowledge of the enormous benefits offered by the King's true territory. Now, however, not to mention one king-dimensional beast, he had found a whole group of them. It alone would be sufficient to make him instantly wealthy. If the whole body of a silver crystal rooster dragon was a treasure and each part could be sold for large amount of money, then this group of ape gods in front of him, which were many times larger, were multiple times more valuable. Rainbow crystal layer ape gods were extremely intelligent and possessed terrifying strength. Due to the former, they could be trained to become servants. Since they were quite durable and could also fight, they were usually sold as a labor force. The most important thing was that they could use human weapons and even practice flux skills. This resulted in them becoming the first choice of large clans and sects when they needed guards to defend their mountains. The prices of these beasts far surpassed those of ordinary rainbow crystal fluxers who were sold as slaves. In addition to that, ape gods were extremely dedicated. Once they accept someone as their master, they would see that person as their master to the day they died. Due to ape gods' intelligence, their souls were extremely close to those of humans. This made them one of the few types of dimensional beasts who could undergo soul refining in a heavenly world. In short, within the fifth dimension, ape god was one of the top 3 races based on its rarity and value. Although it has to be mentioned that the value only existed if the beasts were caught alive. The value of a live ape god within the black market was 1 billion. The value of rooster dragons which Li Yunmu had sold before couldn't even be mentioned in the same sentence. Their group, including Li Qinghong, however, didn't dare to harbor the idea of fighting them even if they had found them. Yet, to their surprise, their master attacked without any hesitation. You all hide yourselves properly. Don't let them discover you or otherwise no one will be able to save you. As for those beasts, let my shadow clan deal with them. Li Yunmu was full of excitement. He not only wanted to fight against these ape gods but to also capture them alive. Each of them was worth 1 billion, but Li Yunmu didn't intend to sell them to others. This group of formidable ape gods was perfect for his heavenly world. He would then also be able to use them, these subdued formidable beasts, as simple thugs. Master, your 4 shadow clansmen, are they qualified? It would be a great loss if even one of them died. Barbarian Niu might usually be thick-headed, but he understood the stakes here. Ape gods were valuable, but the 4 shadow clansmen, which was how Li Yunmu had introduced his shadows to others summoned by him using secondary flux energy, were even more valuable. All of his followers truly believed that he was a formidable summoner and the shadows were life forms from the 6th dimension. And since they were alive, then it meant that they could also be killed. If Li Yunmu hadn't used any excuses, he wouldn't have been able to explain them to Li Qinghong and the other halted fluxers. Regardless of how experienced they were, they could never wrap their heads around the fact that Li Yunmu's 4 shadows might be products of the system instead of life forms summoned using secondary flux energy. These 4 clansmen I summoned aren't ordinary shadow clansmen and neither are they elite shadow clansmen, but king shadows. Li Yunmu didn't provide much explanation, just spouted some nonsense. But once he closed his mouth, his followers were scared out of their wits, unable to believe their ears. The 4 shadow clansmen were all king shadows? How was this possible? What enormous fortune and profound strength would one have to possess to summon 4 king shadows? Yet once everyone thought about all the things which Li Yunmu had shown them, they immediately became numb to this new discovery. This master of theirs certainly couldn't be measured by ordinary standards. According to legends, ordinary shadow clansmen can reveal 50% of master's strength, elite shadow clansmen can reveal 70% of master's strength. As for king shadows, they can reveal 100% of master's strength. Flowing Cloud's mouth opened but didn't close. If the 4 were truly all king shadows, then wouldn't they? Instantly, all 7 fluxers looked at each other, to make sure the others were as shocked as they were. If these were really 4 king shadows, then wouldn't all 4 of them possess the same terrifying defense as Li Yunmu? This was the first thought that simultaneously entered everyone's mind but which they couldn't believe. Reality, however, was even more unbelievable than their imagination. Li Yunmu's 4 shadows soon used their actions to assure everyone that when all was said and done, they were king shadows. The 4 of them were like tigers who'd entered a pack of wolves. They took out their blood fiend thunder cold blades and mayhem descended on the group of enraged ape gods. The 4 burst forth with violent blade which had reached the 5th level and erupted with golden crystal flux energy in addition to blood fiend, thunder, and cold energies, and the terrifying sun god flame energy which Li Yunmu had recently cultivated. When the final layer of extremely pure sun god flame energy, which resembled the great sun true flame, appeared around the blade, it looked as if God himself was assisting the shadows. First strike, second strike, third strike, fourth strike, fifth strike, sixth strike. Li Feng, Li Yun, Li Tian, and Li De. These four shadows seemed to be completely in sync with each other. They first launched charged assault, then unleashed violent blade on separate ape gods at the same time, launching 6 continuous strikes against them. When these continuous strikes laced with Sun God flame energy descended on the formidable bodies of the ape gods, it was like a high-temperature rod had encountered snow. The formidable bodies of ape gods couldn't resist against the stacked strikes. The huge arms and sturdy legs of the beast were chopped off, and the 4 ape gods who possessed formidable combat strength instantly turned into vegetables. Alive! When the 7 Fluxers on the sidelines saw this scene, a thought suddenly formed in their minds. Li Yunmu wasn't simply hunting the beasts, he actually wanted them alive. Chapter 202, Great Courage. As the fight went on, the other ape gods joined in, but the 4 shadows were able to completely ignore their presence and continue with their attacks. Unbreakable, 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 the defense remained unbreakable. This was terrifying. When Underworld Hand, Demon, Flowing Cloud, and others saw the combat strength displayed by Li Yunmu's 4 shadows identical to his own, their hair immediately stood up from being faced with such an abnormal situation. Li Yunmu was monstrous enough by himself, so if 4 King Shadows were able to display 100% of his strength, then that would make it 5 monsters in one. At this moment, Underworld Hand finally understood why when they had exchanged blows previously he felt as if he'd been attacked by 5 layers of enormous strength. No wonder that even a halted fluxer like him who had cultivated a rare cultivation method was still blown away by one fist. It apparently hadn't been a fist launched by Li Yunmu alone but one launched in sync by 5 of him and thus contained 5 layers of energy. Li Qinghong and the others kept watching everything from a distance. Their minds were blank as they followed with their eyes Li Yun, Li Feng, and the other 2 shadows as they cut down the limbs of god apes. The shadows kept on using their continuous strike while being attacked by the whole group of the formidable beasts. This time, Li Yunmu's 4 shadows didn't simply display his absolute defense but also his offensive strength which had increased substantially in the recent days. With the extremely pure Sun God flame energy surrounding the Blood Fiend Cold Thunder Blade, the deadly power of the skills unleashed by the 4 shadows reached the pinnacle of strength at this level. The spectators made some rough estimations inwardly. When confronted with the Sun God flame energy laced Blood Fiend Cold Thunder Blade, even if they had rainbow layer armor with the protective cover, they could only rely on it for 5 to 7 strikes. Once the 7 strikes were taken, the Sun God flame energy would melt their rainbow energy protective cover, and with just the crystal armor without the protective energy cover, they probably wouldn't be able to stand against the successively increasing might of the Blood Fiend Cold Thunder Blade. The group instantly became aware that Li Yunmu's strength had increased by leaps and bounds compared to when he was at Setting Sun Mountain Range. In time, more than 130 ape gods were defeated by Li Yunmu. Regardless of how crazily the beasts had attacked, they were unable to injure the enemy in the slightest, which brought forth the sensation of fear and powerlessness within them. Instantly, an unusually strong ape god howled out while facing toward the sky. It began to guide the remaining 30 or so of his kind to flee. A group of ape gods were escaping. If other Fluxers were to see this scene, then their mouths would certainly fall open from shock. After all, a group of ape gods couldn't be threatened by anything within the 5th dimension. Stop them, your mission is just to stall them. Stop as many as you can. Li Yunmu commanded, and his 7 followers immediately came out of hiding, rushing to obstruct the fleeing beasts. If Li Qinghong and the group had been facing a group of more than 130 ape gods, they could only hope to escape. But when the 7 of them were facing only 30 or so the beasts who had already lost their morale, the halted Fluxeries could even put up a fight against them, not to mention that Li Yunmu only wanted them to stall the beasts. In the end, in their first battle after entering the king's true territory, Li Yunmu's 4 shadows had chopped off the limbs of 132 ape gods while being surrounded by that same group of savage rainbow crystal dimensional beasts. Only 3 of those beasts were able to escape the encirclement. Li Yunmu wasn't afraid of mutilating the ape gods by chopping off their 6 limbs because their bloodline was extremely strong. If they only ate some supplements, their 6 limbs would grow back in no time. It wouldn't be the slightest exaggeration to say that as long as the brain of an ape god was intact, they couldn't be regarded as truly dead. This was the reason why ape gods were so fearless. As for why the captured ape gods were sold for a terrifying price of 1 billion, that was due to their bloodline genes which possessed the formidable regeneration ability. If the ape gods' genes were infused into human soldiers, then although it would still be impossible for them to regrow lost limbs, the strength of their bodies and their healing ability would increase by more than 10 times. The central continent had a squad of 30,000 men which was formed the ape god gene corps. These corps were actually made up of those who had undergone successful genetic modifications with the use of ape god genes. Once ape god's genetic armor and advanced technological weapons were added to the mix, this ape god gene corps could threaten even Flux disciples if the numbers of the two forces was equal. In fact, they could even kill a Flux master if they managed to surround him or her. From this, it was clear that advanced dimensional technology coupled with genetic modification using the genes of formidable dimensional beasts, could allow even a squad of ordinary people to display a terrifying combat strength. Li Yunmu made the 7 people put all the ape gods with damaged bodies into his heavenly world. This time's harvest was enormous, far surpassing everyone's imagination. Master, by relying on the strength of this group of ape gods, almost no one in the 5th dimension will be capable of stopping us. We would even possess the necessary capital to ascend to the 6th dimension if we decided to do so in the future. A bloodthirsty glint passed through the eyes of Underworld Hand. Ascending dimensions. It was the sore point in every halted Fluxer's heart, and also their deepest desire. It wasn't that they didn't possess the qualifications to ascend but that they didn't dare to do so. If they actually ascended to the 6th dimension, they would not only have to fight transcending Flux Masters, but also confront the formidable temporal Flux Masters. Or maybe even Nirvana layer ones who were just one step from entering the Sage layer. That's why even if halted Fluxers had great talent and were the peak cultivators in the 5th dimension, they still didn't have any certainty to survive in the 6th dimension. However, they could now see a hint of hope in Li Yunmu, because he was the only one among all of them who possessed a heavenly world. As long as he had it, there was hope. And now he had also gathered a group of formidable people by his side. I heard it's a known fact within the Fluxer world that Zhanbei has a heavenly world, is that right? Li Yunmu suddenly asked. Yes, reportedly half a year ago his heavenly world condensed the second sun. According to my estimations, after remaining within the 5th dimension for another half a year, he will certainly ascend to the 6th dimension, Li Qinghong answered after thinking about it for a moment. Second sun, a Flux disciple has already condensed a 2-sun heavenly world. Li Yunmu hadn't even dared to think about accomplishing it, yet Zhanbei had already done it. This man was certainly a formidable one. Master needn't show false modesty. With everyone's effort, we should be able to advance Master's heavenly world to 2 suns within a year. At that time we'll only need for Master to congeal those suns, and we'll no longer need to stay within the 5th dimension for the rest of our lives. Underworld Hand and the others filled with excitement at this moment. Who would want to suppress their cultivation and waste their resources, talent, and life? And Li Yunmu was their only hope to ascend at this point in time. Li Yunmu suddenly said, "Your current strength is still far from sufficient. I have a great idea, let's see if you have the courage to accomplish it or not." Chapter 203, 8 Rainbow Light Devil King. Master, you only need to say it. Since our soul imprints are binded to your heavenly world, we will accomplish whatever you command, Barbarian Niu, who was an impetuous person, said with excitement. Li Yunmu surveyed the expressions of all his followers, and then threw out a one word. Recultivate. Recultivate? Master means we should follow in Devil's footsteps and abolish our cultivation to condense a king crystal armor. Once everyone heard Li Yunmu's suggestion, their expressions instantly changed. That's right, apart from Li Qinghong, all of you are extremely weak. Although you can follow in my footsteps for a time, you'll lose your usefulness at the most important time." After saying this, Li Yunmu stopped and didn't continue. Although all his followers were among the most powerful 20 halted fluxers and sounded quite formidable as well as were famous, but besides Li Qinghong, all of them had a weak foundation. With this weak foundation, they certainly wouldn't be able to follow Li Yunmu in the future. Because of that, he decided that if he wanted to form a team of these 7 people, he had to make them follow the path to the true peak of the world. Li Yunmu was quite ambitious, but if he hadn't discovered the king's true territory, he certainly wouldn't have thought of this unconventional method. But since something like this did happen, then why should he not use this opportunity? He naturally wanted for all the members of his team to build a better foundation. These people had to at least possess the potential to enter the sage layer. Otherwise, when he had to accomplish something, he wouldn't have any reliable subordinates to assign to the S.H.A.C.K and would have to do everything personally. If that came to be, then when would he find the time to tread the path to the pinnacle? However, this would require many king-grade dimensional crystals. Even Flowing Cloud thought that Li Yunmu's great plan was quite impossible. Very few of those who had condensed the king crystal armor and began to cultivate with such a foundation had been successful within the whole 5th dimension. This was, of course, when speaking about those who had been successful in the path of cultivation and not everyone who had congealed the king crystal armor. The armor itself required only a single king crystal, but the trouble came when the person needed more of them, yet there were only a limited amount of king-level beasts within the 5th dimension. Those who could accomplish were only those who were from the central city itself and had a profound background. Yet Li Yunmu had suddenly decided that all of his people must build a foundation with king crystal armor. Even if they had discovered the king's true territory, it didn't necessarily mean that they had the sufficient resources to achieve what he suggested. The resources required by 7 people would be truly enormous. If all of you aim for 12 light rainbow king crystal armor, that naturally would be impossible, but if I reduced the requirement to say 8 rainbow light king crystal armor, it would change the matter. I only ask whether you have the courage or not. Li Yunmu said with the intention to make them decide quickly and not refuse. 8 rainbow lights. Everyone simultaneously sucked in a deep breath. Even if he reduced the requirement to only the 8 rainbow lights, the group still felt that would be extremely difficult. However, since they had discovered the king's true territory and were all powerful fluxers, maybe they could give it a try. Underworld Hand clenched his teeth and took the initiative to stake it all on Li Yunmu's choice. We will rely on Master's decision. A halted fluxer who stood at the peak of the 5th dimension couldn't just make the decision to abolish his cultivation and tumble to the lowest rung on a whim. He certainly need to deliberate carefully. The reason why Devil had the guts to recultivate was because he had Azure Dragon Leg Guard and was one of the top 3 most powerful halted fluxers, which meant he had accumulated a sufficient amount of resources. Underworld Hand and the others, however, didn't have such resources. Yet since their master Li Yunmu had already said so much, they understood within their hearts that if they didn't discard their cultivations and recultivate from the start, then his words would turn out to be true. In the future, it would be foreordained that they wouldn't be able to keep up with Li Yunmu. Then, once they lost their usefulness, they would lose their value as followers whose soul imprint was bound to the heavenly world, and their future prospects would diminish. I agree, but I want the highest amount of resources, second only to yours, Master. Li Qinghong remained as proud as before. Even if she was Li Yunmu's follower, within her heart, she still hadn't accepted this transformation. All right, Li Yunmu easily agreed. Even if she hadn't said anything, he would have nurtured her properly. She harbored the Undying Sage blood, which was the supreme treasure of Chao Tian sect and was also highly compatible with her body. In the future, as long as she didn't perish, she was bound to reach the pinnacle. Following this, everyone made their decisions. The aim of this exploration also began to change. It was no longer to harvest earnings like before. Everyone, including Li Yunmu, began to treat this king's true territory as their foundation and the place where they would improve and advance their cultivation. However, everyone couldn't just abolish their cultivations right away, because Li Yunmu alone couldn't ensure the safety of so many people. Furthermore, without the assistance of his 7 formidable assistants, Li Yunmu didn't dare to claim that he would be able to keep killing king-dimensional beasts infinitely. Thus, all of them formulated a rational plan to increase their cultivation in batches. The only person in the first batch was Li Yunmu. Second batch included Li Qinghong and Lin Jian, who would be followed by Underworld Hand and his group of 4, while the last one was Flowing Cloud. The rate of passage of time in King's true territory was 12 times faster compared to the outside world. In other words, 12 days in King's true territory would be equal to only 1 day in the outside world. This was the reason why the majority of Fluxers and great powers viewed King's true territories with importance. Apart from a large amount of resources, it also slowed down the time for those within it. If someone cultivated inside it for a year, only a month would have gone past in the outside world. All the major clans and sects considered the king's true territory as the most suitable region to train their outstanding disciples. Thus, Li Yunmu and his group weren't hasty. After putting the group of ape gods within the heavenly world, they continued on their journey to explore the king's true territory. After probing with the dimensional space eyes, the area showed up to be only as large as one province of the central continent before the Dark Ages. If Li Yunmu used his wings of the wind, he could easily circle the whole region a few times within a day. But since this was the king's true territory, he naturally didn't dare to do so. This region was filled with great dangers and hazards at every corner. If he was reckless and flew into the sky, he would be instantly removed from existence. Even with his defense, he didn't dare to attempt it. The group continued to cautiously push through the plains when Devil Monkey suddenly stopped them again. "You all come quickly and take a look, this is a Devil King. What we were speaking about, it really appeared, how long has it been? It's an 8 Rainbow Light Devil King. Apparently this king's true territory isn't just an ordinary high-level territory, and I had greatly underestimated it." The appearance of a Devil King implied that they shouldn't be far from a 12 Light Rainbow King beast's territory. Devil King dimensional beasts were classified as part of the King class, but they were less formidable compared to 12 Light Rainbow King dimensional beasts. The important factor, though, was that the thing obtained after killing them was still a King dimensional crystal. Li Yunmu had congealed a 12 Light King grade crystal armor, so this beast wasn't of any use to him. However, it was just perfect for Li Qinghong. Chapter 204, Terrifying Devil King. The peak of the crystal armor congealed from the Devil King's 8 Rainbow Light King dimensional crystal would only be an 8 Rainbow Light and not a 12 one. But even then, it was still rare for someone to condense a Devil King crystal armor. The reason for this was simple: there were extremely few Devil King level monsters, and each of them were extremely formidable. Besides, as long as a Devil King class monster appeared, then a 12 Rainbow Light King's nest would certainly be in the vicinity. 12 Rainbow Light King dimensional beasts may not have any Devil King monsters for guards, but if a Devil King monster was discovered, then it was certain that a 12 Rainbow Light King would be nearby. And it was a creature a lot more formidable compared to ordinary King dimensional beasts. Li Yunmu crouched down at the peak of a small mountain, guided by Devil Monkey, and attentively watched the plains underneath. Sure enough, below them there was a Devil King monster who was emitting an 8 rainbow light. The pressure exerted by its presence made everyone feel suffocated even though the group was quite far away from the monster. It was clear that this creature was extremely formidable. It was only an 8 rainbow light Devil King monster, yet everyone felt their hearts pounding vigorously. If their squad wasn't formed from top-tier formidable experts of the 5th dimension, then attempting to attack the 12 Rainbow Light King class monster nearby would simply be courting death. Currently, a formidable Devil King monster emitting 8 rainbow lights could be seen roaming around, leading a group of rainbow crystal dimensional beasts in the plains underneath. Based on its actions, it seemed like it was patrolling the area. This 8-rainbow light devil king had 2 pointed horns on its head, and its body was covered with dragon scales, while a pair of black armored claws flickered coldly. This beast was around 3 meters tall and had a pair of devilish wings on its back. Anyone could tell with a single look that this beast shouldn't be trifled with. Ordinary 8-rainbow light devil kings could be taken care of by Lin Jian and Li Qinghong if both of them acted together, but this monster was clearly stronger than ordinary devil kings. Maybe it was due to this region, but who could really know? When Li Yunmu and his followers sensed this 8-rainbow light devil king's presence, they immediately sensed the thorny problem here. This creature was extremely formidable, far surpassing the 8-rainbow light devil kings one could encounter in the 5th dimension. But this wasn't the most important thing. What really mattered was that by its side, apart from a group of rainbow crystal dimensional beasts, there were 8 4-rainbow light phantom kings acting as its subordinates. Furthermore, all of them without exception appeared extremely strong, far surpassing those of their kind encountered outside. 8 4-rainbow light phantom kings, I'll be leaving them to the 7 of you. As for the 8-rainbow light devil king as well as the group of rainbow crystal monsters, I will deal with them personally. Li Yunmu and the others had already discovered that this place wasn't normal. All dimensional beasts here were more formidable compared to their counterparts on the outside. In fact, they could actually be considered to be a level higher. Li Yunmu didn't know whether his defense could protect him against the 8-rainbow light devil king. The enemy also had a pair of devilish wings sprouting from its back, which made the whirlwind effect of wind god tornado kick ineffective. But given Li Yunmu's present combat strength coupled with the fact that he had 4 shadows now, even if his defense couldn't hold on, he was sure he could still fight. Wait a minute, I think we should leave someone behind. I and Blade Overlord, the 2 of us can stall 2 4-rainbow light phantom kings each. Demon and Barbarian Niu can handle another 4 as well, while Underworld Hand, Devil Monkey, as well as Flowing Cloud, you 3 should remain behind and be ready to deal with any unexpected events, Li Qinghong said, not happy with Li Yunmu's plan. Li Yunmu didn't instantly agree to her suggestions. Are all of you certain that you can handle 2 phantom kings? The dimensional beasts here are more formidable. If it's just stalling them for a short while, we should be able to accomplish it. Barbarian Niu and Demon asserted, nodding. Then let's attack. Li Yunmu led his 4 shadows and swiftly rushed downwards, toward the terrifying Devil King. This was the first time he had chosen to really fight with a formidable Devil King. Last time he had just captured the opportunity and used Wind God Tornado Kick to kick the enemy to death. Violent Blade Critical Leap Strike. The first strike he used was Violent Blade. This skill could be considered as the most efficient blade technique when it came to killing monsters. 1 person and 4 shadows hadn't yet reached Devil King's side, yet they already started to attack, slashing at the rainbow crystal dimensional beasts jumping toward them. 1 strike, 2 strikes, 3 strikes, 17 strikes, 27 strikes. Li Yunmu continued with the stacking the strikes of Violent Blade until the last and most formidable one. With each strike becoming faster and heavier than the last, he waited till the final strike before unleashing the Sun God Flame energy to cover the edge of the blade. He jumped up, reaching a height of several tens of meters and covering a distance close to 100 meters, then struck heavily toward the extremely fierce 8-rainbow light Devil King. This was Li Yunmu's first time showing his full strength in front of outsiders. It was a very long time since he had last been able to make the Violent Blade critical leap strike which had the strength of all the strikes added together. His cultivation had also increased since then, and so the height and distance covered by his leap had also greatly improved. His leap now spanned 100 meters, and the heavy strike contained the power of the previous 27 strikes. Bang! The strike rushed toward the head of the Devil King, but right at the moment the blade was about to land heavily, it was intercepted by armored claws. Li Yunmu immediately sensed that the fierce claw attack was filled with enormous power, and he retreated with even more speed compared to when he had attacked. At this time, Li Yun, Li Feng, Li Tian, and Li Da launched their own leap strikes. Bang! 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 The most formidable, last strikes of the four shadows slammed heavily against the body of the Devil King, which was covered with scales. This critical leap strike was the most formidable attack used by Li Yunmu in his life. From some aspects, it could even be said that this skill, which was the pinnacle of continuous strikes, was even more formidable compared to Aurora killing Justice. This was because it contained the power of 27 strikes added together with a final leap strike. The result of this attack completely shocked everyone. When critical leap strike attacks by the four shadows, each of which contained the power of stacked strikes added together, landed on the body of the Devil King, they could only extinguish half of the rainbow light. The full strength attack of Li Yunmu together with his four shadows could only extinguish half rainbow light of the total the 8 rainbow lights. It must be known that Li Yunmu's combat strength had grown countless times compared to when he fought against the king-dimensional beast earlier, and his blade's edge was also laced with Sun God flame energy, but the outcome was still that it could only extinguish half rainbow light. How? The Devil King, who had taken the 4 critical leap strikes, revealed his extremely fast speed and suddenly disappeared from its original location, instantly catching up with Li Yunmu, who was retreating. Cold light then flickered. Clang, clang, clang. The Devil King unleashed continuous claw attacks, ruthlessly attacking Li Yunmu's King Crystal armor. Li Yunmu was then smacked heavily and flew away like an artillery shell. Bang! He slammed heavily into a hill. Impossible! This time, not only Li Yunmu himself was shocked, even Li Qinghong and the others hiding behind, waiting for the opportunity, also felt that this outcome was unfathomable. How could 1/8 Rainbow Light Devil King be formidable to this extent? It was simply impossible. Ha! Li Yunmu used his strength and crawled back up the hill he had heavily slammed into, but he still coughed up a mouthful of blood. He was injured. The enemy's attack had been like lightning and couldn't be stopped by his safeguard, Admiralty cover, King Crystal armor, Iron body, Tyrant body, Devil Dragon bone armor, as well as the heavenly world, which absorbed some of the damage. Even with 7 layers of defense, Li Yunmu still got injured. This meant that if it had been someone else in his place, even Li Qinghong, who was the most formidable one among the 7 followers, would have been instantly killed by this Devil King. Insta-killed. This was extremely terrifying. Don't come here, run, quickly. Li Yunmu wasn't a fool. He instantly understood that this wasn't an ordinary 8 Rainbow Light Devil King monster. Compared to the 8 Rainbow Light Devil Kings in the outside world, it wasn't a bit more formidable, but so many times it was hard to count them all. This enormous disparity meant that its strength was different even in quality. This Devil King had injured Li Yunmu in their first clash, and even without giving him any opportunity to retaliate. Even a true 12 Rainbow Light King wouldn't be so terrifying. This was a time when a question came to Li Yunmu's mind about what sort of true territory this was. Mother **King King's true territory, who said that? This is no **King King's true territory but an unprecedentedly dangerous region. They had all been mistaken. Li Yunmu was wrong. Devil Monkey, who was an expert about these true territories, was also wrong. Li Qinghong, who had come from Chao Tian sect, and Lin Jian, who had come from Bloody Wood, were also wrong. All of them were wrong. All of them thought this was just a king's true territory, but this place was simple not what they thought it was. All of them had made a mistake which ended with Li Yunmu getting almost killed. This Devil King's speed was extremely fast, like lightning. There wasn't any opportunity to retaliate, and it flashed again, arriving in front of Li Yunmu. It formed a fist by joining his hands and heavily slammed against Li Yunmu's head. Ka-cha! A muffled sound echoed. The life-saving jade coin which was given to Li Yunmu by Lin Yuero formed a divine light protective cover around his body, but a crack appeared in this protective cover under the heavy attack. Yet this protective cover could resist against an all-out attack of a Nirvana layer expert. Dear God! But what made Li Yunmu's heart jump with fear and trepidation the most was not the Devil King's movement speed, which was like a bolt of lightning, but his attack speed, which was even faster. It was like this Devil King was on steroids. Bang, 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 bang. It attacked Li Yunmu 9 times in an instant. Pop! The life-saving jade coin, given to him by Lin Yuero, turned into dust. A jade coin which could resist an all-out attack of a Nirvana layer expert was broken in an instant by this Devil King, with just 9 attacks. Chapter 205, A Drop of the Undying Sage Blood. Although the jade coin given by Lin Yuero had only assisted Li Yunmu for an instant, it was still sufficient. Facing this unprecedented crisis, Li Yunmu erupted with Danger Critical Strike, which he hadn't used in a long time. At one instant he was being beaten into a pulp by the 8 Rainbow Light Devil King, unable to retaliate in the slightest, but the next moment he erupted with an unprecedentedly glorious power. Danger Critical Strike, which hadn't yet appeared after he had reached Golden Crystal Layer, contained Thunder Dark Flux Energy, Blood Fiend Dark Flux Energy, Freezing Dark Flux Energy, as well as the purest Sun God Flame Energy. Golden Flux Energy, combined with the 4 types of Dark Flux Energy, burst forth. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. The 4 shadows moving about in the distance disappeared, because they had been forcefully recalled to Li Yunmu's side. This wasn't just one Danger Critical Strike that he was unleashing, but 5. Instantly, 5 strikes containing every last bit of Li Yunmu's strength struck down toward the terrifying Devil King dimensional beast. An unprecedentedly deadly attack. This was Li Yunmu's most formidable counter. This counterattack even brought out the soul of the Blood Fiend Cold Thunder Energy. An extremely muscular barbarian god from ancient, more chaotic times raised his large blade and struck the Devil King. First strike, second strike, third strike, fourth strike, fifth strike. 5 successive strikes filled with extremely deadly energy attack landed on the 8 Rainbow Light Devil King. They weren't flashy attacks, with only the edge of the blade illuminating the plains nearby. Li Qinghong and the others were terrified and full of trepidation when faced with this disaster. Without caring for their lives, they rushed forth to recover Li Yunmu from the front line. After all, since their souls were bound to his heavenly world, they would live only as long as he did. If he lived, they lived, if he died, they died. The 7 of them, at this instant, were ready to use all their secret trump cards to save Li Yunmu from the deadly clutches of the terrifying Devil King monster. However, before they could even reach their master, he burst forth with an unprecedentedly powerful attack. This attack's strength even surpassed the limits of the power allowed within the 5th dimension. One after another black clouds began to congeal up in the sky. Berserk thunder could be seen flashing up there, but the world punishment didn't descend. This was because Li Yunmu still hadn't surpassed this world's power limit, his strength was still within the limits of the 5th dimension. Once everyone saw that the world punishment didn't descend, they breathed a sigh of relief. As for the terrifying Devil King who was hit by the 5 successive Danger Critical Strikes, 7.5 rainbow lights on his body turned to nothingness. The muscular and sturdy beast's body was cleaved into 2 by the tyrannical blade energy of the Danger Critical Strike. Thud. Li Yunmu's body lost all strength, and he knelt down on the ground. Li Yun, Li Feng, and the other 2 shadows were unable to appear in material form due to having exhausted their energy. This resulted in them returning to being only normal shadows. Leave, quickly, this place is extremely dangerous. After killing the formidable Devil King, Li Yunmu swept his hand over the fighting ground to collect some things and immediately ordered Li Qinghong, who had reached the spot first, to move out. In fact, even before hearing his instructions, Li Qinghong came forward and placed his hand over her shoulder, then erupted forth with rainbow energy and rushed away from the scene while supporting him. Quickly, go, these monsters aren't something we can deal with. Li Qinghong unleashed Chao Tian 8 steps. Her figure flashed a few times, and she immediately appeared several kilometers away. Other people didn't remain behind either, and one after another they escaped with their lives. This event had sobered them up. Although this wasn't an ordinary Devil King level dimensional beast they had encountered, but what really startled them was the might of Li Yunmu's danger critical strike, which had surprisingly cleaved the extremely terrifying Devil King at the most crucial time, killing it. Another frightening part were the 8-4 Rainbow Light Phantom King monsters by the Devil King's side. If they had been ordinary 4 Rainbow Light Phantom Kings, then each of the 7 people, almost all of whom were counted among the top 20 most powerful halted fluxers, could deal with them one-on-one with some confidence in coming out the victors. But the 8-4 Rainbow Light Phantom Kings they'd faced were too unusual. Thus, for the time being, the squad could only escape crazily while holding Li Yunmu in their arms. However, behind them, the 8 Phantom Kings were pursuing wildly while leading several tens of rainbow crystal dimensional beasts. Given the 8 Phantom King dimensional beasts' extremely fast speed, it was clear that they weren't ordinary Phantom Kings. In half an instant, they had actually managed to close in on the group. But Blade Overlord and the rest didn't dare to fight them, because in this place, apart from Li Yunmu, none among them could last for more than half-instant. Fortunately, they hadn't run deep into the plains and so were able to quickly exit and enter the valley. Apparently the valley, which was the transfer point, was a great taboo for the Phantom Kings. They stopped and stayed outside the entry point for a long while, disappearing only after a long while. "Master, are you all right?" Everyone asked the question that's been on their minds through the whole escape. "Still all right, although all my strength has been used up. I need to restore my energy." After learning that he wasn't in mortal danger, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. When they thought about the fact that even a Devil King dimensional monster of this king's true territory was sufficient to exterminate them all of them paled. Heaven only knew how terrifying a 12 Rainbow Light King would be. Given their current level of strength, it would probably be impossible for even Li Qinghong and Lin Jian to fight against just Phantom Kings. How is this possible? How can there be a place like this in this world which holds so many formidable king-class dimensional beasts? Among the 8 of them, Devil Monkey was the most knowledgeable person about King's true territory, but even he didn't have the slightest clue regarding his own question. All of them kept looking at each other in dismay. None of them had ever heard about a secret region which had more terrifying dimensional beasts compared to this King's true territory. Just now, all those 9 King-class dimensional beasts could be classified as King-class monsters without a doubt. After all, the rainbow light emitted from them wasn't false, yet why are they all so powerful? Their strength surpasses the strength of ordinary King-class dimensional beasts by several folds. Li Qinghong was the calmest among the group. She was the first person to regain her cool. Apart from Li Yunmu, each of the remaining people were extremely experienced and knowledgeable halted fluxers, yet none of them had any clue about this place, and all of them felt as if they had seen a ghost. Just now, when I killed that Devil King using danger critical strike, I was able to obtain these things. You all should take a look and see whether you can think of a solution. Li Yunmu, who had completely exhausted his energy, had taken out some supplementing pills and recovered 30% of his total strength. He opened his hand, and on his palm, a drop of golden-colored blood appeared. Once this golden-colored drop appeared, it illuminated the entire valley, covering all the objects in a layer of gold. Deity blood, surprisingly it is deity blood, Li Qinghong, who was the first person who managed to react, yelled out. She was extremely familiar with such a drop of golden-colored blood essence. This was because Sun God Bird's undying sage blood within her body emitted this kind of aura. Chapter 206, Getting Close to the Truth. This drop of sage blood, did it come from that Devil King? Everyone confirmed the blood's origin in succession, and among them Barbarian Niu seemed to be the most excited. That's right, there is still one more thing. Li Yunmu held out a king-dimensional crystal in his hand. This dimensional crystal was flickering with 8 rainbow lights, proving that it was just an ordinary Devil King's dimensional crystal. In fact, when Li Yunmu had killed that terrifying Devil King class monster, he had obtained 3 items in total. First was the blood essence shrouded in golden color, which had floated down from the body of the Devil King and was completely untainted. Second was the 8 Light King class dimensional crystal, which was a completely authentic 8 Rainbow Light King class dimensional crystal. The third item was a dimensional box, which was dropped by the system, thus others couldn't see it. When everyone looked at the 8 Rainbow Light King crystal, although excitement appeared on their faces, once each of them examined it, they discovered that it was just an ordinary dimensional crystal congealed by an 8 Rainbow Light Devil King. It was completely ordinary. Although it was highly valuable, it didn't reflect the unusual nature of that terrifying Devil King. The dimensional crystal is completely ordinary. Apparently the reason why that Devil King's power surpassed the ordinary level was this drop of sage blood. Sage blood was otherwise known as divine blood. It didn't refer to the blood essence of a sage layer life form but was instead a divine blood. It actually contained a hint of divine nature. The founder of H.A.D.W sect had refined a sun god bird and only obtained 1 drop of sage blood essence from the whole sacred beast, which contained a hint of undying divine nature. This hint of undying divine nature was related to the sun god bird, because it had turned into an undying divinity because of natural evolution. Because of it, as long as Li Qinghong harbored the drop of undying sage blood within her body, then regardless of the number of injuries she sustained or how fatal they were, she would still come back to life. This was the power of that drop of undying sage blood that came from the sun god bird. As long as her soul didn't disappear completely, her body couldn't be considered as being destroyed. This was the divine characteristic of the undying sage blood within her. 1 drop of divine blood could be obtained from refining a sacred beast. From this, the preciousness of sage blood was clear. Yet the Devil King class dimension beast which Li Yunmu had just killed surprisingly also possessed a drop of sage blood. That's not right, this drop of sage blood doesn't have any divine characteristics. How can it be? It has clearly attained the grade of sage blood, but it doesn't have the slightest hint of divine nature. Li Qinghong held the most authority in this field. After careful inspection, she discovered a minute difference between the drop of blood she owned and the one Li Yunmu had acquired from the Devil King. When the others heard her evaluation, they rushed to the drop of sage blood and closed their eyes. They began to carefully sense the energy fluctuations. The extreme purity of the energy contained in the drop of sage blood terrified them. But it indeed didn't contain any hint of divine characteristics. It has to be known that this blood was called sage blood because of the hint of divine within it. However, the one in front of them didn't have any of it. In other words, it only appeared to be divine blood but didn't have any divine characteristics. The preciousness of a divine characteristic lay in that hint of divinity. Blood without a divine characteristic, regardless of how pure it was only a drop of extremely pure ordinary blood whose quality was equal to that of divine blood. But even so, a drop of divine blood was sufficient to make Lin Jian, Underworld Hand, Barbarian Niu, Demon, and the others go crazy. A drop of sage blood, which had divine nature, had led to the creation of H.A.D.W sect. Although this drop of sage blood didn't have any divine characteristic, it was still an extremely precious treasure in the eyes of Flux disciples and Flux masters because the extremely pure energy which it contained was extremely pure. If they possessed it, they would have a chance of nurturing their bodies to enter sage layer, which was more than enough to interest all of them. If the soul imprint of this group of people hadn't been bound to Li Yunmu's heavenly world, then this drop of sage blood would have probably resulted in a fight from which only one would come out alive. However, everyone naturally wouldn't act like that right now because their fates were in Li Yunmu's hands. Devil Monkey breathed a sigh of relief and tried to analyze the unexpected situation. We're now certain that the reason why that 8 Rainbow Light Devil King could surpass ordinary Devil Kings was because it had swallowed this drop of sage blood. Apparently this secret region is really King's true territory. It was just our bad luck to run into a Devil King which had encountered a great opportunity previously and nothing else. The others instantly shook their heads, as if having thought of something that disagreed with his evaluation. That isn't right. If the reason behind that 8 Rainbow Light Devil King's excessive strength was this drop of sage blood, then how could those 8 Phantom Kings by his side also surpass ordinary Phantom Kings by so much? Could they have also swallowed a drop of sage blood? Flowing cloud raised the doubt which caused everyone's heart to throb from fear. How could they have obtained so much sage blood? This was something Li Yunmu wondered about, and also what filled the others' hearts with confusion. All of them could think of one possibility, but they didn't dare to believe it, let alone voice it. They were absolutely terrified of mentioning it, because this possibility would likely shatter all they knew. For a short while, all of them looked at each other in dismay. Perhaps it was really a king's true territory, since this secret region was in existence which far surpassed outer world and had a surplus amount of king-class dimensional beasts, but there was another possibility, and it was a place where a deity once perished. Lin Jian and Li Qinghong finally couldn't endure anymore and voiced this possibility. It alone could explain perfectly why an 8 Rainbow Light Devil King as well as 8 4 Rainbow Light Phantom Kings could be more than 10 times more formidable compared to other dimensional beasts of their kind. All of them had swallowed a drop of divine blood. However, how could there be so much divine blood? A sacred beast of dark ages which was refined using special methods would only give 1 drop of divine blood. It was evident that only a deity-level life form could have enough divine blood for all of these king-class dimensional beasts to devour a drop. Only this could explain the existence of such a large amount of extremely pure sage blood without the slightest hint of divine nature. This was because all the divinity within the divine blood had been congealed into a divine crystal by the deities. When a divine crystal exits, divine characteristics naturally don't manifest themselves. True deity, it's a true deity-level life form which perished here. Right then, this thought rose in the hearts of all of them, including Li Yunmu. Each one of them came to this conclusion, but none of them dared to speak it out loud. A deity had surprisingly entered a king's true territory within the 5th dimension, and even died there. How could there exist such a huge coincidence? This was both a king's true territory and a deity's relic. Confirming whether there truly was a deity life form which perished here is quite simple. We only need to kill a phantom king and it would verify our suspicions. Li Qinghong seemed to have turned into a blazing cannon with her eyes burning like fire. The hearts of others were also burning passionately. This guess was extremely terrifying. They wanted to try her suggested method but were also afraid to be proved wrong. Let's go and confirm it. A hint of excitement appeared within Li Yunmu's eyes. If this experiment required him to fight another Devil King, he probably wouldn't have the courage, but if it was just 1 4 Rainbow Light Phantom King, he was absolutely certain they would be victorious. Each of their hearts boiled with the desire to verify the guess without wasting any time. If this was really a king's true territory where a deity had perished, then this secret region they discovered would be unprecedented in history. There was no need to say anything. Regardless of what kind of enormous price they had to pay, they had to occupy this place and turn it into Li Yunmu's private secret region. No one should be allowed to get a share of these resources. Chapter 207, Keeping it to themselves. The group quietly returned back to the plains. The 3-dimensional space eyes, which were flying at a high altitude, turned on their stealth mode and began to secretly investigate. Gradually, everyone began to develop a little sense of familiarity towards this area. I've already confirmed that this area is the domain of the king, Devil Monkey said. On the east of these plains, I discovered another 8 Rainbow Light Devil King. On the west side, there is another one, Li Qinghong added. If we count the one we just killed on the south, that would make a total of 3 Devil Kings. There should be more than that for certain. Underworld Hand also spoke up. I couldn't gather much information over there. There is a mystical fog at the center which is obstructing the dimensional space eyes. If my guess is correct, then there should be an even more terrifying king-class life form there. A 12 Rainbow Light King, according to standard criteria, should at least have 8 Devil Kings and 60 Phantom Kings by its side for protection. This was the lowest number of king-class protectors at the side of a 12 Rainbow Light King. As for the number other monsters, it would vary but there should be at least 100 of them. This was just the lowest estimate. Some extremely formidable 12 Rainbow Light Kings had even more Devil and Phantom Kings, which were also even more formidable. The numbers of the former creature increased greatly, surpassing the lowest estimate of 8, so there was no need to even mention what happened to the other ones. When Li Yunmu had killed the Dwarf Witch King at the Valley of Dwarf Witches, it didn't have any king-class monsters by its side for protection. And neither could it maintain its king-class strength all the time. After coming to this king's true territory, Li Yunmu finally understood something. Apparently that Dwarf Witch King he had killed hadn't truly been a king-class being. However, it had certainly come from this king's true territory because of some serious reason. Otherwise, why would a king-class dimensional beast possess a godly treasure like an origin dimensional stone? There were also the map fragments pointing to this location. It was absolutely certain that the Dwarf Witch King was a 12 Rainbow Light King who had fled from this king's true territory because it had obtained a godly treasure from the deity's relic. Others must have started hunting that kind down for the origin dimensional stone, and thus forced it to enter the 5th dimension. This would explain why it couldn't maintain the form of a 12 Rainbow Light King all the time, and also why it didn't have any king-class dimensional beasts protecting it. The domain of the 12 Rainbow Light King which they were investigating now clearly followed all the standard patterns. There were Devil Kings and Phantom Kings as guards, as well as countless other dimensional monsters which hadn't entered king class. If all of them hadn't devoured sage blood, then Li Yunmu probably would have already led everyone to kill them. However, it was clearly impossible now. It wasn't sensible for Li Yunmu to put himself in grave danger every time to trigger danger critical strike when confronting monsters as terrifying as the Devil King they had faced previously. Not even speaking of Li Yunmu, even if Zihanbei, who was publicly acknowledged as the most powerful person in the 5th dimension, came here, he would also have to bow his head. Target discovered, that group of Phantom Kings appeared once more, but they're under the command of another Devil King. After hiding for half a day, a new Devil King came out, leading 16 Phantom Kings by its side. This time, no one dared to overestimate themselves and confront the terrifying might of the Devil King before them. They didn't need to do so, either, since their only aim was to verify their theory. They had to just kill a Phantom King and check whether a drop of divine blood would appear after it died. Target has appeared. Lock on to that Phantom King at the back. Aim. Ready to shoot. Shoot. This time, Li Yunmu, who had burned his hands previously, led everyone to conceal themselves at a mountain peak more than 10 kilometers away. At such a distance, even if he couldn't use the underworld Raven S.H.A.D.W, all of them could still kill a single 4 Rainbow Light Phantom King. There was one best way to do this, and it was by using the 4 runic spear forbidden weapons which he had snatched from the Shadow Squad. Presently, they had been installed on top of the mountain. Under the control of Underworld Hands Group, the 4 extremely deadly weapons locked onto the same Phantom King with the help of coordinates provided by a dimensional space eye. Next instant, the 4 forbidden weapons shook violently, and the formidable recoil even removed a layer of dirt of the mountain. 4 deadly runic spears rushed towards the target at 8 times the speed of sound, whistling through the air. They rapidly covered the distance of several kilometers and shot towards the Phantom King at the rear of the group. It was instantly blown away like a kite from the enormous force of the collision. But the single spear did not kill Lit. Life forms who possessed sage blood were excessively formidable, but after the first attack came the second, then a third and a fourth. Bang! There was a faint noise of something heavy dropping on the ground, and the 4 successive runic spears finally took the life of an extremely formidable Phantom King. A drop of golden blood came out of its body and hovered in the air. Second drop. It's really a second drop of sage blood. This time they confirmed that there was certainly a deity-level life form which had perished here, and all king-class dimensional beasts here had benefited from that. It was thus no wonder then that the Devil King could instantly break Li Yunmu's absolute defense. Also it was no longer that surprising that it had turned the jade coin given by Lin Yuero, which could resist an all-out attack from a Nirvana Flux Master, into dust within an instant. After all, these king-class dimensional beasts had already obtained treasures from the deity's relic. Run, that Devil King has sensed our location. It's rushing over here and is running very quickly. Escape immediately. Devil King was yelling out loudly as it rushed over, but Li Yunmu's group was already fleeing. Li Yunmu waved his hand and instantly collected the 4 forbidden weapons back into his heavenly world. He then opened his wings of the wind and flew up, while others used their own methods to escape as quickly as possible without paying any more attention to the drop of sage blood in the distance. There was nothing they could do after all. If it was only a phantom king who had devoured sage blood, they could still deal with it by joining hands. But right now they were being chased by a devil king, from whom they could only flee. It was the first time that Li Yunmu had to flee. Until now, whenever he had faced dimensional beasts, they wouldn't even be able to break his defense, let alone force him to run away. This devil king was exceptionally formidable, but everyone's heart was boiling with excitement. They had obtained their confirmation that this king's true territory was indeed a deity's relic, which was more than sufficient. As for the excessively formidable dimensional beasts, they could be handled. Given enough time to strategize, there would certainly be a day when they could deal with these abnormal creatures. Everyone in the group was thinking the same thing. Fortunately, the 10 kilometers were a sufficient buffer, so even though the Devil King was chasing after them at an extremely fast speed, with everyone trying to return to the transfer point in the small valley as fast as they could, they were able to return safely. Now we must quickly return to Moro Mountain Tenebrous Hidden Domain. At this time, Li Yunmu made his decision and commanded everyone in a firm tone. Yes, we don't have to rush to exploit this secret region. What we must do for now is to destroy the flowers over the waterfall and capture all the Naranharas within the water. We must keep our hold on this secret region. This secret region is an enormous reserve, and I'm afraid that someone might use the other pages to find another method to enter. If there really is a second way to enter, then we'll have to kill one if one comes, and kill two if two come. Everyone returned through the transfer point back to the valley. When they met outside, they could still feel their loud heartbeats. Regardless of what methods they had to use, they had to keep their hold over this secret region. With it, they could enter the 6th dimension, and it would be fairly certain that all of them would become flux sages. Chapter 208, Li Yunmu's Stubborness. Many days had passed since S.H.A.D.W's 6 elite disciples had tried to kill Li Yunmu, and the news that S.H.A.D.W's sect had lost completely while Flowing Cloud had been captured had already spread everywhere. Everyone knew almost all the details. This time, S.H.A.D.W's sect had suffered enormous losses. Together with a great loss in face, the 6 elite disciples had also lost all their cultivation of the sect's secret technique and even brought harm to the sect's foundation. However, there were those that guessed that with S.H.A.D.W's sect's resources it was one of the top 10 majestic sects. After all, this event would barely graze it, let alone damage its foundation. It was soon reported that the 6 peaks of S.H.A.D.W's sect had introduced 6 new elite disciples. In order to prove their strength, these 6 new elite disciples rendered many accomplishments in the past few days, creating a great commotion. Have you heard? Apart from Yeqing, who belongs to the main peak, the other 6 new elite disciples are all female. Rumor is that all of them are top-notch beauties, only one step lower compared to Flowing Cloud. Pa, why has S.H.A.D.W's sect become so desperate? Even if Northern Black Wind, 1000 kill Mo, and them lost their flame energy, the sect shouldn't promote 6 frail beauties to take their place. Don't spread nonsense. You shouldn't underestimate this group of elite female disciples, for they're extremely ruthless. Each of them is extremely formidable, and I don't think that they would lose to the previous 6 elites in terms of strength. Yes, you're right. Yesterday they attacked and killed many halted fluxers in succession. Reportedly those halted fluxers had friendly relations with Underworld Hand and his group, and for this all of them are being ambushed and killed. This alone confirms that the strength of this group of elite female disciples is extremely terrifying. Besides, do you even know what kind of person is that Yeqing of S.H.A.D.W's sect? He publicly declared that after 5 days he's going to challenge the Tower of Glory and certainly reach the 70th level. I think, given how domineering he is, he should be the core successor of H.A.D.W sect. 70th level. This was certainly a frightening ambition. Even if H.A.C.K had the cultivation of rainbow crystal layer, among the fluxers of all 6 continents, there were only a few people who were powerful enough to clear the 70th level. Given that H.A.C.K was representing H.A.D.W sect's pride, no one thought he was just shooting his mouth when he made the public proclamation about clearing the 70th level. If he wasn't absolutely certain in being able to accomplish it, then H.A.D.W sect wouldn't have allowed him to behave so arrogantly. Due to all of this, there was only one thought in everyone's mind: this H.A.C.K whom no one had heard about previously had been certainly concealed at some secret location by H.A.D.W sect. Many people even deduced that if he cleared the 70th level and obtained a powerful treasure from the Tower of Glory, he will certainly lead another attack on Yunmu. When all is said and done, this is what H.A.D.W sect is. As for who between H.A.C.K, the domineering successor who had appeared suddenly, and Yunmu, who had been fearlessly confronting all the dangers in his path, was stronger, most of the fluxers had no idea. Because in the past several days, H.A.C.K's accomplishments had stunned the fluxer community of the 6 continents. Very formidable, really very formidable. Reportedly he has left the mountain and has been challenging the top 10 most powerful halted fluxers to battle. Yesterday, even Gongzanangong, who is ranked 3rd, suffered defeat under his hands. His strength far surpasses the strength of Li Qinghong, who had rebelled against H.A.D.W sect. Yes, he is really too powerful. After losing face, H.A.D.W sect was forced to reveal their secret trump card. It's said that the 2nd-ranked devil still hasn't appeared to accept H.A.C.K's challenge. This shows that even a person like Devil is frightened of him. That's right, he is a genuine trump, worthy of being called an upper-tier sect's last line of defense. Who could tell whether he or Zhanbei is more powerful? There's no doubt that Zhanbei is more powerful. There isn't anyone who can surpass him. He is the true number 1 of the 5th dimension. In a short few days the news about Li Yunmu defeating H.A.D.W sect's 6 elite disciples became old news due to a typhoon named H.A.C.K, whom H.A.D.W sect introduced publicly right after their defeat. Many people who were unaware of the whole situation exclaimed inwardly after seeing his formidable might. Seems like H.A.D.W sect has been forced to show their true colors. At this time in the depths of Moro Mountain Tenebrous Hidden Domain, Li Yunmu was looking through the information about H.A.C.K on his stellar COMM. He faintly laughed and asked, "Given my present level of strength, how much chance do I have against this 2nd great-grandson of H.A.D.W sect's founder?" In terms of just strength, since Master's cultivation of the secret technique has reached the great circle of major threshold, then even if you stay still, he won't be able to beat you. A hint of disdain passed through Li Qinghong's eyes. Apparently she was still disgusted by H.A.C.K. But if H.A.D.W sect has bestowed a transcending sage treasure on him, then you will be in danger, Flowing Cloud added. This was the main reason why Devil hadn't accepted H.A.C.K's challenge to duel after Gongzanangong had been defeated. Those who understood the real situation were already aware of what was going on, but those who weren't privy to the true facts still believed that Devil was simply intimidated by the formidable future successor of H.A.D.W sect. However, since H.A.C.K has left the mountain, H.A.D.W sect must have full confidence in obtaining the refining pagoda. I believe they already have 5 transcending sage weapons. Although Li Qinghong disdained H.A.C.K, when she was speaking right now, her expression was solemn. Can H.A.D.W sect really resist transcending powers using the Sun God flame killing spell created by transcending sage weapons? Lin Jian asked, puzzled. Since he was from Blat Ewood, he had first-hand knowledge of what strength transcending powers possessed. Transcending powers were the highest layer within the hierarchy of the 6 continents. Logically, it shouldn't be possible for a sect to surpass them just by relying on some transcending sage weapons, otherwise all the supreme powers wouldn't even be worth being called supreme. I don't know, either, but I've got a suspicion that this Sun God flame killing spell is just a diversion. Their true aim should be to use their consummate spell to absorb even purer flame energy so the strength of H.A.D.W sect's flux sages would increase to another level, Li Qinghong said with some uncertainty. Clearly this was just her guess. And because Flowing Cloud hadn't had the standing in the sect to know these kinds of secrets, she knew even less. But Li Qinghong words alone were enough for Li Yunmu's eyes to narrow. He suddenly felt that her guess was probably right. On that day, his great sun tyrant body muscle marrow secrets had increased rapidly with the assistance of flame energy killing spell used by the 6 elite disciples. If 6 fifth-dimensional treasure weapons could allow him to rapidly advance his great sun secret technique, then the enormous amount of energy which could be drawn from the star using a flame energy spell constructed by 6 flux sages using transcending sage weapons would certainly reach terrifying levels. In a split second, Li Yunmu realized that this matter was much more serious than he had thought. If H.A.D.W sect was able to obtain 6 transcending sage weapons, this was certain to come true. And given their status of an upper-tier sect, they were certainly in possession of enormously deep reserves which made it impossible to stop them from achieving their goal. But delaying them is certainly possible. Li Yunmu immediately made his decision. You all protect this place, and don't forget to catch all the Naranharas in the waterfall pond. I will make another trip to the Tower of Glory. Master, don't tell me you want to. A hint of savageness flashed in Demon's eyes. He seemed to have thought of something. That's right, I want to take the opportunity to clear the 70th level of Tower of Glory before Yeching and obtain the refining pagoda. Li Yunmu's words astonished everyone. Chapter 209, Heavenly World expanded once more. In the backyard of Good News Pavilion, which was in the virtual dimension, a mysterious guest had arrived secretly. Little brother, what on earth is this? When Old Ho personally received Li Yunmu, his expression revealed a hint of cautiousness. He rarely saw this boy displaying such cautiousness, trying to keep his whereabouts hidden. Could it be because Yeching, who had recently left H.A.D.W sect, had already put Li Yunmu's life in danger? However, when Old Man remembered that Devil, who was ranked second, also didn't dare to accept Yeching's challenge, he no longer found it strange. If even Devil, who was an extremely savage person, was afraid of H.A.D.W sect's Yeching, then Li Yunmu being a little careful about his whereabouts was completely normal. Old Ho, what's the progress regarding the purchase of dimensional crystals? More than 10 days had passed since Li Yunmu came last time. It was clear then that he had now come for the flux crystals. Of the 20 billion, I have barely spent more than half. I didn't dare to spend it wantonly outside, so as to avoid attracting attention and thus keep your identity secret. With a command from Old Ho, his people began to carry out trunks filled with flux crystals, one after another. Li Yunmu collected all the trunks filled with flux crystals into his heavenly world and instructed, no need to be hasty, you continue to purchase slowly and don't let anyone outside learn about the deal between you and me. Little brother, is that Yeching of H.A.D.W sect really so formidable? Even you have to be careful about whereabouts. Old Ho couldn't help but ask this before Li Yunmu departed. Yeching. Li Yunmu was startled at first, and then started to laugh. Clearly this old man had misunderstood. He wasn't being so careful because of Yeching's threat but because he needed to secretly return to the real world. He wasn't afraid of some flux disciple, but of flux masters and higher-level experts. However, he didn't explain anything and quickly departed from the virtual dimension. After returning to the forest near the waterfall, Li Yunmu immediately told everyone what their task was. I'm leaving now. You all must quickly break the 7-star scale spell. I'm afraid that H.A.D.W sect won't be willing to let this matter end. It is highly probable that they learned of the secret behind our stay in Moro Mountain Tenebrous hidden domain. Devil Monkey and the others were still striving hard to learn the 7-star scale spell. If they wanted to be the sole owners of the king's true territory, then they had to break the spell at its entrance. Destroying it was relatively simple, if they chose to use force. Deciphering it, on the other hand, required a specialized squad and certain knowledge. In fact, this 7-star scale spell was the only key to entering their king's true territory. As long as they removed this key, they could occupy that land by themselves, without anyone else being able to enter it. All major powers and sects possessed something like this. Their disciples and younger generations didn't need steel castles for cultivation, just to enter the secret regions owned exclusively by the powers whom they belonged to and cultivate their secret techniques until they could make a name for themselves in the world. If some power didn't have a secret region of its own, then how could it provide sufficient resources for the quick improvement of its disciples and younger generations? Li Yunmu and his group were actually in the middle of accomplishing such a task. Although Li Yunmu didn't have a squad of people specialized in spell formations, he had the system. For several days now, he had been relying on the system to break down the 7-star scale spell. Every night during the wee hours, when the spell would appear for 3 seconds, the system would meticulously try to analyze it. After the analysis of several days, it had made some progress. The current responsibility of Li Qinghong and the others was to capture all the Naranharas in the large pond, because they were the most crucial point of the spell. These seemingly ordinary Naranharas which were found everywhere had something extraordinary within themselves. Each of the Naranharas had extremely fast speed underwater, and they had also developed godly senses. If they felt a premonition of danger, they would escape quickly and disappear without any trace, thus it wasn't as easy to catch them as one might think. Under the large pond, there was an underground river. When Devil Monkey and the others dived in to chase them, the fish entered the underground river, making it difficult to track them. The only moment to catch them was the instant when the red flowers floated down at the wee hours. The 7 of them had been staying here for several nights. By now, they had captured more than 10 fish, but they still had a long distance to go when it came to capturing all of them without leaving any behind. After assigning this task to them, Li Yunmu's figure flashed and disappeared into his heavenly world. The trunks containing 11 billion dimensional crystals stood in a pile nearby. Without almost any hesitation, Li Yunmu poured them all out on the ground. Soon after, heavenly world's 100-meter diameter began to increase at a speed which could be observed with a naked eye. This time, although Li Yunmu felt his heart aching at the thought of investing such an enormous sum of more than 10 billion, he clearly understood that heavenly world's area must be increased. The reason why S.H.A.D.W was considered as the number 1 person in the 5th dimension, apart from his innate talent and great fortune which admittedly played a major role, was because he possessed a heavenly world. Furthermore, he had already congealed 2 suns in his heavenly world. Otherwise, even if he had exceptional great innate talent and heaven-defying battle prowess, he still wouldn't have become unrivaled in the 5th dimension filled with numerous fluxers from all the 6 continents. Such a frightening character, even Li Yunmu couldn't help but admire him. A lone flux disciple without any great background or any major power supporting him would need great determination to advance his heavenly world to 2 suns. And even with many powerful organizations trying to hunt him down, he was still alive and well. S.H.A.D.W was a genuinely formidable person and wasn't like the proud sons of heavens. He was extremely determined and had formidable perseverance. All 3 of the factors mentioned earlier had brought him enormous rewards, allowing him to advance quickly. Man Tian and Hai Yu had cleared the 20th level of the Tower of Glory when they only had the cultivation of ordinary crystal layer, attaining supreme glory. According to Li Yunmu's deduction, it was highly possible for both of them to possess an enormous reserve, like a heavenly world, apart from possessing the formidable bloodline of evolved humans. After all, Man Tian was the son of Desolate Continent's barbarian god king, who had the authority to turn the entire desolate continent upside down. Hai Yu didn't have a simple status, either. Her other name was Holy Daughter of the Sea God. Even if Li Yunmu was beaten to death, he would never believe that these 2 people had cleared the 20th level on their own, without possessing their own heavenly world. This was because if he hadn't had the assistance of the underworld raven S.H.A.D.W and the strength of the 3 shadows, the farthest he would have advanced would have been the 15th or 16th levels. This time, since he had decided to break Chao Tiansek's plans, he must use all means to advance his combat strength as quickly as possible. After all, now that his cultivation had reached the golden crystal layer, tower badges wouldn't drop that easily for him. That's why he didn't hesitate to throw nearly 11 billion flux crystals onto his heavenly world. After half a quarter of an hour had passed, the land underneath his feet finally stopped extending and stabilized at a diameter of 500 meters. In terms of area, it had grown by more than 10 folds, while the diameter had roughly increased 4 times. Chapter 210, Changes Caused by Divine Blood. When the large amount of dimensional crystals were poured into the heavenly world, Li Yunmu only felt that the congealed sun seemed to have eaten a large amount of supplements. Its size suddenly increased. From where Li Yunmu was standing, his sun appeared to be several times larger than the great sun seen from the earth. Even more star power surged down, illuminating the entire heavenly world, and the multitudes of small stars reflected this light, causing a major transformation. One sun-ranked world master, Li Yunmu finally attained this rank. After congealing this one sun, a portion of will in the depths of his consciousness alerted him that he would now need even more space elements to nurture his heavenly world. The amount of flux crystals required to congeal the next sun was roughly 10 times the amount required to congeal the first sun. Only now did Li Yunmu gain a bit of understanding why a legendary character like the Flux Ancestor was only able to congeal 7 suns. Difficult, this is extremely difficult. This was possible only if one encountered great fortune. If someone believed that they could congeal the network of 12 suns just by relying on themselves and become a deity of the present world, it was simply a pipe dream. Once the diameter of the land swelled to 500 meters, the area of the small spring head at the center increased from 1 square meter to 5, and thus could now be considered a small pond. Apart from this, there were also some new developments in the grassy terrain. Some land suddenly rose up, by some 4-5 meters, forming what could be classified as mini hills. The whole process was as if a land was developing here naturally. The main question in Li Yunmu's mind was what amount of world energy was now under his control, once he threw over 10 billions of dimensional crystal into his heavenly world. System, calculate the strength of world energy under my control. Li Yunmu clenched his fist and concentrated all the world onto it. He launched this punch into empty air, creating a small explosion. This attack was comparable to the explosion of a mid-sized homing missile used on Earth. It would be enough to fascinate many people. Host, presently the amount of flux energy you can move is close to the full strength attack of a temporal flux master. While speaking in the outside world, it is roughly equivalent to an all-out attack of 4 Rainbow Light Phantom King. The system quickly calculated and presented the data. In the heavenly world, the amount of world power Li Yunmu could utilize was roughly 10 times what he could bring out in the outside world. Within his heavenly world, the formidable might of his punch was equivalent to an all-out attack of a temporal flux master. It was no wonder that people called temporal flux masters were seen as exceptionally powerful given that their one attack could cause as much destruction as a homing missile. But in the outside world, the amount of power Li Yunmu could use was equivalent to that of a 4 Rainbow Light Phantom King. This allowed him to surpass ordinary rainbow crystal fluxers by far, because they were only equivalent to a single rainbow light dimensional beast in terms of power. In other words, even if he didn't use the power of his flesh or the flux energy he had cultivated and only relied on world power, his strength, which was comparable to 4 Rainbow Light Phantom Kings, was sufficient to suppress rainbow crystal layer fluxers. But this didn't include halted fluxers like Li Qinghong and Blade Overlord, because these people weren't ordinary rainbow layer fluxers. They possessed sufficient strength to fight against a 4 Rainbow Light Phantom King. This is still not sufficient, I need more strength. Li Yunmu still wasn't satisfied. He took out the drop of golden-colored blood and swallowed it. This was of course the drop of divine blood which he had obtained after risking his life to kill that Devil King with 5 danger critical strikes. Although this drop didn't have divine nature, it was still the blood of a true deity. This one drop of blood essence contained an enormous amount of extremely pure energy, which far surpassed the sum of blood essences in multitudes of life forms which had been purified and absorbed. Li Yunmu gulped down this treasure. He didn't submerge it into his navel region to nurture his body's constitution, and neither did he merge it with the blood vessels to transform them and strengthen the foundation of his body. He just gulped it down directly to his stomach and began to rotate the Great Sun Tyrant Body Muscle Marrow Secrets. Great Sun, Tyrant Body, Muscle Marrow. The drop of sage blood, after being swallowed by Li Yunmu, was absorbed by the sacred purifying pearl and entered his heart, thus completing the circle. The reason why divine blood was named so was because it was the purest blood essence in the world, without the slightest hint of impurities. Thus, after being processed by the sacred purifying pearl, its essence was still the same as before. With the rotation of the Great Sun Tyrant Body Muscle Marrow Secrets, this supreme body refining technique, it was refined and merged with every nook and cranny of Li Yunmu's body. The 8 Rainbow Light Devil Kings who naturally possessed extremely formidable bodies would become even more ferocious after being nurtured by the divine blood. However, they didn't have any body refining techniques, not to mention a supreme cultivation one, and thus could only absorb this drop of divine blood on instinct. Their harvests were then obviously not too large, which was the reason why this drop of divine blood had appeared after its owner was killed. Li Yunmu wasn't a dimensional beast but a human who cultivated a supreme body refining technique. After he started rotating it, the blood essence immediately transformed into endlessly surging energy which merged with every nook and cranny of Li Yunmu's body, from muscles and bones on the outside to the internal organs inside. At this instant, Li Yunmu felt as if his heart had attained an unprecedented amount of power. Every time it throbbed, it was as if the whole world shook. When he took a breath, he felt like a large whale swallowing whole rives, while every time he exhaled, he felt like Nile which had erupted with flood. His skin became even fairer, and his hair began to grow rapidly. His muscles began to broaden, and his bones transformed, becoming heavier. Each and every transformation came from the refinement of the drop of divine blood not based on instinct but technique. As for the most profound transformations, Li Yunmu was notified about it by the system. Ding! Congratulations host, your Great Sun Tyrant Body Muscle Marrow Secrets has been upgraded to the 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 20th, 30th level. Ding! Because you have refined a drop of divine blood, your tyrant body had attained the Great Circle realm. Your flesh has been strengthened by a substantial margin, and its strength has increased significantly. Ding! Because your muscle marrow secrets received assistance from the drop of divine blood, your innate talent has been improved. Ding! Congratulations host, your devil dragon bone refining secrets has attained 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 20th level. Your devil dragon bone armor has been baptized by the drop of divine blood, causing a bizarre transformation. Ding! Because you have been baptized by divine blood, your flesh has been unusually strengthened. Because it has become overly formidable, your copper body secrets have been overshadowed. The cultivation of copper body secrets has been completely discarded. At the moment when Li Yunmu refined the drop of divine blood, great changes happened to all the supreme flux cultivation methods in his body. As long as the cultivation method was related his flesh in any way, it would be influenced. The one who was affected the most was the Great Sun Tyrant Body Muscle Marrow Secrets. Although there were no change to the Great Sun secret technique and it was still at the minor threshold, but the tyrant body had achieved a minor threshold. Besides that, because of the divine blood's assistance, Li Yunmu's innate talent had also improved to an even higher level. The most important thing was that his Great Sun, tyrant body and muscle marrow had all achieved a minor threshold. Because of this, the cultivation method as a whole had been instantly upgraded to the 30th level, making Li Yunmu's body monstrously powerful.